August 25th, 1944. 2:36 a.m. outside a rain-soaked motor pool in Normandy. Sergeant Isaiah Bell had one hand inside a dead engine and the other wrapped around a flashlight that was dying with it. The truck in front of him was a GMC CCKW. 2.5 tons on paper, 5 tons in the bed when nobody was looking, and according to an old British evaluation report, folded inside a supply tent less than 50 yards away. It was the wrong truck for this war. Underpowered, too long, too crude, too weak for European roads. That was the official opinion. But behind Bell, stretching into the dark, thousands of those rejected trucks were beginning to wake up, one after another. Headlights covered down to thin blackout slits, engines shaking, drivers waiting, gasoline cans stacked like bricks, ammunition crates sweating in the rain, rations, medical supplies, spare tires, oil drums, everything an army needed to keep moving. And 400 kilometers to the east, General Patton's tanks were burning through their last fuel. If those trucks did not roll before dawn, the fastest Allied advance since D-Day would stop cold. Not because Germany had stopped it, not because the tanks had failed, not because the infantry had broken, because the army that had just cracked open France was about to be defeated by empty cans. This is the story of the truck nobody respected. The GMC CCKW, the Jimmy, the deuce and a half. The machine Britain doubted, Germany underestimated, and thousands of black American drivers pushed across France until the entire meaning of modern war changed. Because in the summer of 1944, the question was no longer who had the best tank. The question was who could keep the worst road alive one more night. To understand why Isaiah Bell was bleeding onto a carburetor at 2:36 in the morning, you have to forget the clean map version of World War II. Forget arrows. Forget flags. Forget those neat lines that show armies moving across Europe like someone simply dragged a pencil forward. On the ground, an army moved only as far as fuel, food, ammunition, tires, water, oil, and replacement parts could be dragged behind it. And by late August 1944, the Allied army had moved too fast for its own shadow. On July 25th, Operation Cobra ripped open the German line west of Saint-Lô. More than 1,000 heavy bombers smashed a narrow front. German defenses buckled. Then they broke. Then they disappeared. Patton's Third Army surged forward so quickly that French towns scheduled for long fights fell in a single afternoon, 50 kilometers in a day. Then 60, then more. The advance looked like victory. But every kilometer made the problem worse. A Sherman tank could swallow fuel at a terrifying rate. A single armored division had hundreds of vehicles. Patton had multiple divisions. The First Army needed its share. British and Canadian forces needed theirs. By early August, Allied fuel demand had climbed into the millions of gallons per day. Every day. And the supply base was still back near Normandy. The ports were wrecked. The railroads were shattered. The bridges had been bombed on purpose before D-Day to keep German reinforcements away. That strategy had worked. It had also destroyed the same transportation system the Allies now needed to feed their own victory. Cherbourg had been captured, but German demolition teams had left its docks broken, cranes twisted, and approaches mined. The artificial harbors off Normandy had performed miracles in June, but they could not feed two army groups racing toward Germany. So the war reached a humiliating truth. The Allies had air power, they had tanks, they had ships, they had men, they had momentum. What they did not have was a road that could keep up. That road would have to be built out of trucks, not steel rails, not harbor cranes, trucks, thousands of them, driven day and night across roads bombed, shelled, mined, misread, overloaded, and jammed with every other desperate thing moving east. The system got a name that sounded almost too simple for the crisis it was meant to solve: the Red Ball Express. Red ball signs marked the priority route. Military police cleared intersections. Convoys had right-of-way, no civilian traffic, no delay, no excuses. The official rules sounded careful: 25 miles per hour, 60-yard intervals, convoys of at least 5 trucks, regular maintenance, scheduled rest. Within a day, almost every rule was bent. Within a week, most were broken. Drivers pushed past speed governors. Trucks ran overloaded. Brake linings burned down. Clutches screamed. Engines overheated. Men drove through blackout conditions so complete they sometimes followed the truck ahead by the sound of its engine instead of the shape of its taillight. And 3 out of every 4 drivers were African American soldiers, men the Army had told, in policy and practice, that they were not fit for the kind of glory handed to combat units. So they drove instead. They drove for a segregated army. They drove through a country that would still make many of them sit in the back of a train when they came home. They drove because men at the front were waiting for what was in their cargo beds. And the war did not care what America was ready to admit about them. Isaiah Bell understood that contradiction better than most. He had grown up near Macon, Georgia, in a repair yard where nothing was ever new and everything still had to run. Farm trucks, broken tractors, second-hand engines pulled from one machine and forced to serve another. His father had taught him that a machine usually told the truth before it died. You had to listen before the failure became visible. A vibration in the frame, a sweet smell near the radiator, a shift lever that resisted the hand, a brake pedal that sank a little too far and came back a little too slow. Bell joined the Army in 1942 and was sent where the Army sent many black men who were good with their hands: transportation, quartermaster work, maintenance, service, the kind of work official culture treated as secondary until the moment it failed. By Normandy, Bell knew the CCKW better than any manual could. He knew its sins. The brakes wore down fast when overloaded. The transmission hated abuse. The tires punished careless drivers. The engine could sound healthy while hiding damage. But he also knew its gifts. The frame flexed before it surrendered. The engine tolerated bad fuel and worse roads. The truck could be repaired with hand tools, stolen minutes, and the kind of improvisation no factory drawing ever admitted would be necessary. It was not beautiful. It was not elegant. It was not the best truck anyone could imagine. It was the truck that could be made again, and again, and again. The CCKW had been born from an earlier disappointment. Before it, General Motors had produced a similar military truck that British evaluators tested and judged harshly. Too little power, too much length, not enough confidence in mud, hills, and tight European movement. The rejection stung. So GMC engineers reworked the design, a stronger 270 cubic inch six-cylinder engine, about 104 horsepower, six-wheel drive, tandem rear axles, different wheelbase options. A frame simple enough to build quickly and fix in the field. By the standards of a peacetime engineer, it was modest. By the standards of a war that ate machines by the thousands, it was genius. Not because it could do one impossible thing, because it could do one necessary thing millions of times. American factories built the CCKW in numbers the enemy could not match. Hundreds of thousands. More than 500,000 by the end of production. Enough that a single rejected idea became a river of steel across the Atlantic. And on August 25, 1944, that river had to start moving. Bell got the engine running just before dawn. It did not roar. It coughed. It staggered. It shook like a man standing up after a blow. Then the idol caught. Bell stepped back. The driver, a 19-year-old from Mississippi named Calvin Raines, looked at him through the open cab. "You trust it, Sergeant?" Bell wiped grease from his wrist and looked at the truck, then at the line of trucks behind it, then east. "No," he said. "I trust what happens if it stays here even less." Raines nodded, slipped the truck into gear, and rolled into history without knowing it. 4 days later, the Red Ball Express delivered more than 12,000 tons in a single day. Almost 6,000 vehicles moved through the system. The numbers stunned officers who had spent their careers believing that kind of movement was theoretical. It was not theoretical anymore. It was rain, diesel, mud, hunger, fear, and men driving until the road blurred into a single gray line. But the miracle had a cost. By early September, the Red Ball was not just running. It was grinding itself apart. Trucks came back with cracked blocks, burned clutches, warped drums, shredded tires, broken springs, leaking radiators, and cargo beds bent from loads no specification sheet had ever approved. The official answer was simple: ground the unsafe vehicles. Bell looked at the math and saw disaster. If every truck that deserved rest was pulled from the line, the convoys would lose too much capacity. Forward depots would empty, Patton would slow, the Germans would gain time, and time in late 1944 was measured in bodies. The argument finally reached a requisitioned farmhouse being used as a logistics office. A colonel with red eyes and a clean uniform looked at Bell's maintenance sheets as if they were evidence in a trial. "You are authorizing trucks with known defects." "Yes, sir." "You marked this one as cracked." "Yes, sir." "And it still ran?" "It delivered fuel yesterday." "That is not the same as safe." Bell kept his voice flat. "No, sir, it is not." The colonel leaned back. "Then explain why I should not remove your authority." Bell could feel every officer in the room waiting for him to say too much. So he said only what could not be argued with. "Because the truck does not fail all at once. That was the part the paperwork missed. The CCKW had failure stages. Some were warnings, some were limits, some were death sentences. Bell could tell the difference by sound, heat, vibration, smell, and the way a driver described what happened in the last 10 miles. A cracked housing was not always a stopped truck. A weak brake system was not always the same danger on every route. A transmission noise at dawn could mean one more run, or it could mean a tow cable by noon. The manual treated damage as a box to check. Bell treated it as a living condition. And in that room, for the first time, someone with rank understood what that meant. Captain Thomas Greer, a young ordnance officer who had studied engineering before the war, followed Bell out after the meeting. He did not offer sympathy. He asked questions. For 3 hours, the two men walked between trucks, while Bell turned instinct into language. Green, run it and watch. Yellow, run it once, then repair. Red, ground it before it kills someone. Not perfect. Not safe in the way a factory inspection wanted, but honest. A field triage system for machines in a war that had no patience for perfect conditions. Within days, Bell's shop boards were covered with marks every driver could understand. Oil leak here. Brake pull there. Transmission second to third hesitation. Radiator risk. Wheel bearing heat. Men who had once reported that a truck felt wrong now learned to say exactly how it felt wrong. That changed everything. The red ball did not become smooth. Nothing about it was smooth. But the system became smarter. Fewer trucks died without warning. More bad trucks were caught before they became wrecks. More damaged trucks completed the one run that mattered before being pulled aside. It was the difference between chaos and controlled risk, and controlled risk was the only kind of victory available. Still, the road kept demanding more. By the fall, Allied supply began shifting toward ports and rail repairs. The Red Ball Express officially ended in November, after moving more than 412,000 tons of supplies. For a moment, it seemed the desperate convoy age was closing. Then December came. On December 16, 1944, German forces erupted from the Ardennes forest. The offensive hit through fog, snow, and surprise. American lines bent. Some broke. Units were surrounded. Road junctions became life-or-death geography. The name Red Ball had been retired. The need had not. The idea came roaring back in successor routes and emergency convoys, because the Battle of the Bulge became a contest of movement again. Who could feed the fight? Who could move fuel through snow? Who could keep artillery supplied? Who could reach Bastogne before the pressure crushed it? Bell was in Belgium when the order came. He had trucks in winter storage that should not have been asked to do anything more demanding than leak quietly under canvas. By dawn, he needed them running. Engines refused the cold. Brake lines cracked. Batteries died. Fuel thickened. Men warmed parts with their hands and breath and whatever heat they could steal. At 5:40 a.m., Bell had fewer trucks than the order demanded, so he sent what he had and kept fixing the rest. That was the unspoken rule of the convoy war. Enough was never enough. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne was surrounded. German armor needed the road network. Patton's Third Army was turning north in a maneuver that depended on fuel arriving before momentum ran out. Fuel became the difference between a relief column and a frozen line of steel. On the night before one of those pushes, Bell rode in the lead jeep of a convoy carrying gasoline toward a forward depot. The road was ice. The sky was shut. Blackout discipline left the world almost blind. Drivers listened for engines. Tires whispered over frozen ruts. Somewhere beyond the trees, German artillery searched the road by habit and chance. At 4:18 a.m., the lead truck slid sideways on a downgrade. The driver fought the wheel, let the truck drift, and brought it back without stopping. At 5:02, shells started falling ahead, not close enough to be aimed, close enough to make the road a gamble. Bell made the decision no manual had written for him. He moved the convoy off the road, across a frozen field, and back onto the route beyond the impact zone. 2 trucks sank through crusted snow. Tow cables came out. Drivers cursed under their breath. Engines strained. No one turned around. By morning, the convoy reached the depot. Gasoline came off the trucks in frozen hands and dented cans. Patton's armor kept moving. The corridor to Bastogne opened on December 26th. History remembers the tanks that broke through. It should. History remembers the airborne soldiers who held the town. It should. But before the tanks moved, someone had to get the fuel there. Before the artillery fired, someone had to bring the shells. Before a commander could choose speed, someone had to make speed physically possible. That was the secret the Red Ball Express had exposed. Modern war was not won only at the point of contact. It was won in the long, ugly distance behind it. On roads nobody wanted to drive, with trucks nobody wanted to praise, by men the country they served refused to fully honor. When the war in Europe ended, many of those men came home without parades that matched what they had carried. Some returned to segregated trains. Some returned to towns where a uniform did not protect them from humiliation. Some said little about France, Belgium, the convoys, the nights without sleep, the fear of failing strangers they would never meet. Bell returned to Georgia with a Bronze Star pinned to a jacket, grease still deep in the lines of his hands, and no illusion that one war had ended every battle. He opened a repair shop. He fixed farm trucks. He fixed buses. He fixed engines for men who sometimes respected the work before they respected the man doing it. And in a drawer, folded between old invoices, he kept a copy of the field notes that had once helped a broken convoy system keep moving. Green, yellow, red, run it, watch it, stop it before it kills somebody. The CCKW lived on, too. Long after the war, its design logic echoed through military truck doctrine across the world. Not because it was the most advanced vehicle of its time, because it had proven a harder truth. A weapon does not matter if it cannot be supplied. A plan does not matter if it cannot be sustained. A breakthrough does not matter if the road behind it dies. The British had looked at an early version of that truck and seen a machine that was too crude to trust. In one sense, they were right. It was crude, it was plain, it was limited. But war is not always won by the thing that looks best on paper. Sometimes it is won by the thing that can be repaired in the rain by a tired man with split knuckles while 6,000 engines wait behind him. August 25th, 1944 began with a truck nobody wanted. It ended as a lesson armies would spend generations relearning. The road is the weapon. The people who keep it alive are the force. And the machine that mattered most was not the one that fired. It was the one that did not stop.